Calculated data confirms that the garden of Chuburji was commissioned by Princess Jahan Ara, who stepped outside of her traditional role in the Mughal dynasty and became known as an architect, engineer, painter, poet, writer, and the activist. Anyone who has lived in Lahore is familiar with an ancient Mughal structure, oddly placed in the middle of one of city's busiest intersections, the Chuburji Chowk. Chuburji is a title given to the building because of four sturdy pillars that stand tall on all its four sides, joined by thick walls like those of the Delhi Gate inside the walled city. Chuburji too was a great pleasure of garden which has now vanished. Whatever is left of it has a uniquely feminine touch to it. Azure, blue and sea green mosaics with holy verses engraved on the walls. There is a grave inside the mysterious dwelling as well, which is said to be that of one Begum Fakhrun Nisa, a lady in waiting for Princess Jahan Ara, daughter of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. Calculated data confirms that the garden of Chuburji was commissioned by Princess Jahan Ara. The conflict of opinion about the construction of Chuburji must be addressed here. Some historians have associated Chuburji with the Emperor Aurangzeb's daughter, Zebun Nisa, whose tomb lies a few kilometers away. However, there are also those who do not agree, since chronologically Zebun Nisa could not be more than 8 years of age in 1646, the date of Chuburji's completion. Also, Zebun Nisa lived in hiding and solitude all her life until her death in the same spot where she now buried. A princess in hiding would not choose to have gateway built that could lead to her hideout. Lastly, and more importantly, there is a plaque with an inscription on it on the doorway of Chuburji that reads, Sahib-e-Zabinda, Begum-e-Dauran had this built in 1646. The several titles bestowed upon the Princess Jahan Ara by her father, supreme among women of the age, mistress of ladies of realm, queen of the world, queen of all times, clearly suggest that the Begum-e-Dauran was indeed Princess Jahan Ara. The collection of architecture views at the British Library holds a picture of Chuburji from 1880s, taken by an unknown photographer, and also records the building to be commissioned by the Princess Jahan Ara, as are Jamia Masjid, Chandni Chowk, Mausoleum of Moinuddin Chishti, the Shrine of Mullah Shah, and the Caravan Serai in India. Ziauddin Ahmad Birnai, the historian who wrote the biography of Jahan Ara, says that architectural passion of princess was not limited to the aesthetic aspect of structures she had commissioned, but she also paid for them from her own pocket. Having said that, Jahan Ara's pocket was not a mean one, since she was always handsomely paid by the royal treasury, according to the Dirk Collier, starting at a staggering allowance 6 lakh rupees per annum when she was only 14 years of age. Until the year of her death in 1681, her yearly allowance had been increased to 1.7 million rupees. Let me explain to you few more things about the Jahan Ara. She was a princess, of course, but the easy flow of money did not stop Jahan Ara to be a woman of substance. She owned factories, according to Berni, and also extensively engaged in trade with the East India Company and brought revenue not only to her personal bank but also to the royal treasury. She had a ship named Sahibi, which was at sea for expeditions. She would send people for pilgrimage to Mecca, have sacks of rice distributed among the poor in the Holy Land, import and export merchandise, and make profits from her business. Born as the second child to Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal in 1614, Jahan Ara was an immediate favorite of her father, who named her the adornment of the world. As was the custom introduced by the Mumtaz Mahal, the wet nurses for the royal children were made part of household and harem, and the female tutors were hired for the education of the children. The structure of the Zinan or Mughal harem changed since teachers, nurses, and guides were included among the wives and concubines of the emperors. Therefore, Jahan Ara in the Zinan Khana was raised among the learned women such as Dayanga, Satyun Nisa Khanam, and Hari Khanam Begum. This privilege made her the woman she was: intellectual and poetic, intelligent and business-minded. Apart from her being good at earning and spending money in the right way, Jahan Ara was a biographer. The 1920 biography written by the Berni and digitized by the Richter Foundation is a collection of Jahan Ara's prose and the poetic works. Her collections of Sufi knowledge as well as intimate letters between herself and her siblings, especially Aurangzeb, to whom she had implored several times a division of empire instead of a family feud. It was Dara Shikoh, Jahan Ara's favorite brother, who introduced her to Sufi path, and after much insistence, Mullah Shah accepted her as a disciple, and during their association, he wanted to name her as his replacement but could not, due to Sufi order. She wrote the biography of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti and titled it Khawal Moin, translated in Urdu as Munisul Arwah. Her second book, also a biography, Sahibiya, was a recollection of the life and experiences of her spiritual mentor, Mullah Shah Bedakshi, who was a successor to Sufi Mian Mir. Jahan Ara's flair for writing is evident in the two books, now a part of Shibli Academy in Azamgarh, India. Jahan Ara was a shadow of her father. She was always close to both parents, but she became more affectionate after her mother passed away in Burhanpur, and the difficult task for the consoling her father as well as the burial of mother was at hand. She gave the last ritualistic bath to Mumtaz herself, writes Fergus Nicole. Jahan Ara also encouraged her father to build the Taj since it gave him a motivation. Indu Sundaresan, in her book The Shadow Princess, featuring Princess Jahan Ara as the protagonist, discusses the power dynamics inside the Mughal court as well as the Zinan Khana right after the death of her mother in 1631. As per the tradition, the power of dead queen should have been shifted to one of the other wives of Shah Jahan, but such was the hold of Jahan Ara over her father's trust and his court that she became the Badshah Begum instead, much to the disgrace of her stepmothers and her sisters, Princess Roshan Ara. Jahan Ara's rise to power was welcomed by one other person in the family, Dara Shikoh. Dick Collier notes that Shikoh had always lived a life of comfort as compared to Aurangzeb, who was out in the field fighting battles and expanding the empire. Roshan Ara, the youngest sibling, had offered support to Aurangzeb, but Jahan Ara stood firm with Shikoh and father's decision. Once Aurangzeb asked his eldest sister if she would ever think of supporting him, to which Jahan Ara replied in the negative. According to Andrea Budenchen, who wrote the book The Life of a Mughal Princess Jahan Ara, daughter of Shah Jahan, Darashikoh was a source of comfort to her while Aurangzeb caused her turbulence throughout her life. William Wilson Hunter, in his book The European Struggle for Indian Supremacy in 17th Century, writes that in March 1644, Jahan Ara's silken clothes dozed in rich perfume, caught fire from a clay lamp, and she was burnt very badly. The doctors in the empire gave up, saying the burns were too severe to be cured. Until that time, the British had arrived in India, but were stationed only at the Surat port and were not allowed to move. One of those ships, HMS Hopewell, had an English doctor on board, Dr. Gabriel Bofton, who was brought to Agra in haste. The doctor's magic worked, and although Jahan Ara's face could never be cleared of the burn marks, her wounds started to heal within weeks. Grateful, the emperor ventured to compensate the doctor, who politely refused and only asked for British traders to be allowed movement to all the ports of India, which was accepted by both Jahan Ara and Shah Jahan. She healed well even after a few glitches of treatment. Jahan Ara died in 1681 and was buried upon her request inside the shrine of Sufi Nizamuddin Aulia in Delhi. Its small enclosure that houses her grave. The grave is not even closed from the top but with sand, just the way she had wanted it to be. A piece of poetry written by herself is engraved on her tombstone. It reads, "Do not let anyone cover my grave but with green grass, for I am the poor and only that should be my last cover."